A big win for Nebraska over Rutgers. No matter how you slice it, the Huskers are 5-1 to enter the bye week. We react next to 14-7.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, here we go. 14-7. Welcome to the Big Ten officially, right? It's only been 14 years. We win a game 14-7. You're in the Big Ten now, and you're happy about it.
Somebody
Nebraska
needs to tell Washington and USC and everyone that. Well, not Washington after last night, but they're having a rough go.
Tell them it'll be 14 years before they finally figure it out. Nebraska is halfway through their season. They head into the bye week at 5-1. That is the main headline from the win on Saturday afternoon at Memorial Stadium. But there are sub-headlines, Mitch, such as special teams, punting, defense, Tony White, James Williams, I think is a storyline.
Yes.
There's several other things. Where does our brains go first?
My brain goes first to a couple things. One, like I mentioned in the open, Nebraska's 5-1. And let's just say this right off the top. College football it was drunk on Saturday, and it's pretty wild all year. So if you're 5-1, that's pretty good at this point. Let me tell you who's 1-5 first. Kansas, hot team a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Everyone wanted Kansas as coach. Florida State is 1-5. They were 13-0 last year in the regular season. Not this year. Let me tell you who's undefeated, other than the big dogs: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Miami. I'll throw Miami into that realm. Otherwise, Indiana, Iowa State, Pitt, BYU, and then a few group of five teams: Liberty and two service academies, Army, Navy. Shout out to the Army-Navy game after the college football playoff selection is completed in December. 3 top 10 teams in the SEC: Alabama, Tennessee, Mizzou, all lost in somewhat shocking upsets on Saturday. Mizzou shocking not because it lost, but because it lost 41-10 at Texas A&M. This is a crazy year. So if you see a little bit of craziness in front of you as a Nebraska fan, like 14-7, where you need a fake punt and a heroic punt by your punter who looked like he was knocked out of the game in the first quarter, take it. Take it as a win. Be very happy that you're 5-1 and you're going into a bye week, knowing that the next 2 games are against 2 of those undefeated teams that I mentioned, Indiana and Ohio State, on the road.
5 out of the top 12 AP top 12 teams lost yesterday. It should have been a 6th with Miami. I don't know if people stayed up late to watch that. That finished about 1:30 in the morning Central Time. And man, I was taking in the final minutes of that game and I was thinking, what the heck is going on here? I mean, there were some bad calls, targetings that were definitely targetings, illegal forward passes, illegal man downfield on the game-winning touchdown. I mean, it was so bad. Miami should be counting its lucky stars right now, but they're 6-0. So, or 5-0, I suppose. But my goodness, yeah, you're right. Wild day of college football. And Nebraska is, generally on the good side at this point with the 5-1 start.
Other thing, Nebraska won a 1-score game. These things don't come around often, so we have to highlight it. Nebraska is 9-31 in 1-score games since the start of the 2018 season. This was the second 1-score win for Matt Rhule out of 8 such decisions. He won the Northwestern game a year ago and now has the Rutgers game as a feather in his cap in 2024, 14-7. When does this start to become a non-issue? When they don't look like this. Like, this didn't need to be a 1-score game. On one hand, you have Rutgers where you can say, my goodness, they're going to walk out of Lincoln thinking, we didn't score in 6 chances from the 2-yard line. I believe one of them was from the 5-yard line, but 5 chances from the 2-yard line. And we dropped a wide open touchdown when the Nebraska DB fell to the turf and the ball hit our receiver in the face. And that turned into a non-productive series. All of that, and you lose 14-7. At the same time, if you're Nebraska, you can think if Jalen Lloyd can miss one guy after catching the fake punt pass from Brian Buschini, it's 21-0, 1-2 plays into the fourth quarter, and that game never gets close.
I'm not sure how he got tackled on that, for the record. The one guy left just kind of stuck his arm out and perfectly tripped him up. It was an amazing show of physics and gravity or something. I'm not sure how he went down on that play. You're right though. It was missed opportunities on both sides. And sometimes it's about who takes advantage of them a little bit more. And it doesn't really matter at what time in the game you do. So Nebraska jumps out to a 14-0 lead, and they just basically sat on it the entire game. And one of the things, so I did Big Red Overreaction for 1620 The Zone on Saturday night. And, a thing that I knew was going to come up during the game and did come up after the game was, what do you think about this conservative, play calling and just sitting on the lead in the second half? Like they weren't going out there and taking it. Well, if you look closely, and I don't have the stats directly in front of me or cobbled up together, Nebraska was starting almost every drive in the second half in disadvantageous position. They were back inside their own 5 at least twice to start drives. And so they just weren't able to get anything off the ground. That's a little bit of an excuse, but I don't need them to bomb the ball down the field with a 14-0 lead, a crazy wind, and a defense that has been playing lights out all day long. So there's situational stuff where Nebraska needs to kind of find a happy medium there. But man, I like you said, Mitch, the story here, the big part is Nebraska's got to win in a close game, in a game that they fathomably could have lost, and that's the big picture.
We'll just dive off of that, one quick little offshoot of this offensive game plan stuff. So do you think that Nebraska got spooked, either Raiola or Satterfield got spooked a little bit when Dylan threw the pick? Because that was a real freshman moment, and seniors make those plays too, but it was a freshman moment where he didn't see a linebacker. First of all, it was a high snap, so he was a little bit out of sorts on the play. And this is an opportunity where Nebraska's up 14-0, and you think, okay, if they can keep their foot on the gas, this game's going to be over real quick. And he put it in the air, and it was an interception by the Rutgers DB, and they're going the other way. And Rutgers had good field position throughout this game and continued to just come up empty. But I kind of thought after that the game plan got even more conservative, and Nebraska's MO was, let's take this off of Dylan. We think that we are winning the battle up front on offense with physicality. Let's lean on the running backs today. And while that did work to some degree to extend some drives and keep the ball away from Rutgers, it didn't put the game away by any stretch.
I don't know that was the moment, but I do agree with you that it happened. I think they got a little skittish in the game, and I shouldn't say they, because I don't think it was a play calling thing. I think it was a Dylan Raiola thing. I think Dylan got a little skittish on Saturday night. So he threw the interception. They came back and they scored on the next possession. So
not as decisive as we've seen him.
No. And there was a clear one. It was on the second or third to last drive where Nebraska's trying to ice it out. All they really need is a first down. I think it was probably the second to last drive, or maybe even the last one.
Yeah, the last drive. He did this.
He got Barney wide open on an out route by the sideline, and he just doesn't throw it. He
took a sack.
Yeah, he took a sack on the play. He could have thrown it. And that's a situation where I just think he was probably told, hey, look, whatever you do, you just can't screw this up. And that was kind of how it went. Nebraska, I'm counting up the numbers in my head right now. So Nebraska on their last, let's see here, 5 drives ran 22 plays. So that's not good. They had one drive that got them 10 plays. All of the other ones were 3 plays each. So yeah, they weren't able to grab that much clock off of what they were trying to do and be conservative.
That was really the feel that I had in that game. Like Nebraska was hanging on offensively, and that's not the feel that Nebraska wants to put out there, obviously. And Nebraska was aggressive with some things that it did in this game, like going for it on 4th down on the first possession of the game on its own side of the field. The fake punt on its own side of the field obviously is a very aggressive play call when you're in that situation, to punt it away and just continue to nurse your lead. So they're giving off this sense that they want to be aggressive. They want to be this team that is pushing forward. We're playing to win, not playing not to lose. But then the actions and kind of the way the offense executed at the end of this game was as if the offense was playing not to lose. So that's an area that I'm sure they're going to address in the bye week, something where they need to find a way to progress, because these offenses, these teams that Nebraska will now play, all of them, to be honest, over the last 6 games, are not going to be as forgiving as Rutgers and Purdue in allowing you to putz around offensively and just keep a 1 or 2 score lead. I mean, you have to go for the throat when the opportunity is there against Indiana or UCLA, even USC. It'll be interesting to see like how that evolves for Nebraska here over the next few weeks.
Well, on the other side, defensively, and we'll come back and talk about this plenty more on the other side. But man, it was a heck of a day for Tony White's defense. I think that group earns a game ball. They've stretched a couple games in a row now where they've been pretty lights out. So we'll talk about that on the other side. Thanks for being with us on this reaction podcast as Nebraska wins at 14-7 over Rutgers. We'll be back on the Locked On Nebraska podcast after this. All right. I'd like to talk to you all about LinkedIn. Let's talk about LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and free. You're already on LinkedIn anyway, and LinkedIn it's not just a job board. It also helps you hire professionals that you can't hire anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job in a given month. So we're talking about expanding your pool a little bit. In a given month, more than 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional. That's on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, and Mitch Sherman here to tell you about Gametime. College football season, it's halfway over. The playoffs, division series are underway in Major League Baseball. It's time to get excited about fall sports around here. You can see the Royals gear on me, behind me. Royals are down 1-0 to the Yankees after some botched umpiring in Game 1 Saturday night of the ALDS. That's all right. They're going to make it up on Monday night and come back home even. If you've got a game you want to see in person, I will tell you that Gametime is going to make that experience much easier, because it is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and you can get all kinds of tickets to various events through the Gametime app. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices go down the closer you get to first pitch. Whatever you want to, wherever you want to go this fall, wherever, concerts, Major League Baseball games, college football. If it's a hot ticket, it's on Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, we are back for the second half of this reaction podcast, Locked On Nebraska. Huskers beat Rutgers 14-7 on Saturday at Memorial Stadium. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is here with me. So who was in the house on Saturday at Memorial Stadium? None other, and he was around Friday too, around campus. So I think his aura was present throughout the weekend. None other.
Like a special word that you were supposed to, or the kids are saying aura. Did you know that these days?
Do they say that?
Yeah, kids are saying aura all the time now. They're saying aura in places that I could never imagine.
Kids are doing strange things on the field that get penalties called on them for simulating the use of a weapon also.
You don't like the sword move?
What is this about? Yeah, the sword. I mean, did you see the Minnesota one where he lifted up his jersey? And this is an emphasis from the NCAA in calling penalties.
Apparently.
Ndamukong Suh did not simulate the use of weapons when he played because his body was a weapon. He was there. He led Nebraska out of the tunnel alongside his, quote, nephew, Dylan Raiola, on Saturday before the Huskers beat Rutgers. And this was a game that undoubtedly made Ndamukong Suh very happy. Very, very happy. I mean, what a tribute to one of the greatest defensive players in Nebraska football history, if not college football history, to have not one, but two game-changing defensive stands. One on the goal line, as we mentioned earlier, but is worthy of mention again. After the second blocked punt by Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights nearly score a touchdown on the return. They've got it at the 2. My immediate reaction is, okay, there goes the shutout. Nebraska hadn't pitched a shutout since the 2009 Holiday Bowl, last game played for Mr. Suh in his career.
Nebraska's
so here we
back.
go.
We're here to stay.
Yes, that was the Bo Pelini. Nebraska's back, and we're here to stay. They beat Rob Gronkowski. I don't think he played, but he was on that Arizona team. Nick Foles, yes, NFL quarterback at one time. He played and was a factor. He was the Wildcats quarterback in that game. Anyway, defensive stand at the goal line was fantastic to see for the Blackshirts. Then a defensive stand at the end of the game, which we've kind of grown accustomed to those end of game situations turning into drives for the Nebraska opponent. Like I don't know that I have an accurate count of the number of times in recent years where an opponent has got the ball with a chance to win or tie late and has just marched the field and done it. But that did not happen. That did not happen with Athan Kaliak-Manis at QB, who's beaten Nebraska twice in the past 2 years. It was funny. Matt Rhule came into the post-game interview room, Nebraska's coach, and he mentioned that he's seen this before where Kaliak-Manis got the ball and he drove the field and scored. And it didn't happen this time because the defense, according to them, they just didn't care. They decided to stop thinking about the situation, to stop looking at the scoreboard, stop thinking about the clock, stop worrying if the opponent got a first down, and just go out and play. So I guess it's that simple.
Yeah. Well, he also didn't have Daniel Jackson with a toe tap of a lifetime in the corner of the end zone this time around. It was amazing what the defense did on Saturday. It was in a game that's built for the defense to be really good, with the way that Rutgers plays and the wind swirling the way it was at Memorial Stadium. So I was counting it up here. Rutgers had 11 drives in the game. 11 drives, 9 of them reached Nebraska territory. So it's not like they were just dominant getting 3 and outs. I mean, they were coming up with stops at the right time. Rutgers was 2 of 14 on third down in the game. I mean, that is the stat of the century for Nebraska. It was a key before the year. They were not good in it last year. They weren't as good as they wanted to be. 2 for 14 in a game like this is just
what on fourth down?
I'm not looking at it directly. 2
for several.
2 for 6.
2 for 6. 6 fourth downs. If you're going to go for it 6 times on fourth down, you better be a good fourth down getting team.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a point.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is a Nebraska podcast, so we're not going to belabor this point. But what the hell, Greg Schiano? Like, you're supposed to be a really good coach. Like, you are the only guy who can successfully coach Rutgers. You've been in the NFL. Matt Rhule, full of praise, says he's one of the best defensive masterminds out there. Been the Ohio State defensive coordinator. Like, I'm not going to doubt that. But like the game management for Rutgers, I was sitting next to the guys from NewJersey.com. The main news source out there that covers Rutgers. They had three writers at the game, so they're into Rutgers football. Like, they cover it, and these guys were kind of beside themselves, coming up with headlines that they were going to use about how Schiano just like kissed this thing goodbye. So offensively, they just got away from what they do. Rutgers did. It was working in the first quarter to run behind Monangai. And then they went away with it. Why? Because Nebraska beefed up the defensive line by adding one linemen, one down lineman, and put a couple jack linebackers in there, and the wind is like barreling through Memorial Stadium, so you just completely are going to go away from what you do as an offensive team and put it on the shoulder of Athan Kaliak-Manis, who threw 2 picks and was under 50%. Like that's not good. And then the other thing with Rutgers, after it blocked 2 punts, why aren't they coming after Buschini more? Like he's got to be a little bit spooked. His back, I mean, he's walking like a he like a 75-year-old out there on the field, and you have them backed up a couple times where he's punting out of the end zone. Like I'm advocating for Nebraska from my seat to just take the safety at one point to to be able to get a free kick.
Cross my mind. Yeah.
And one, because you don't want Buschini to get knocked out for the season by taking another hit when he's already hurt, and 2, because it'll get you some breathing room and you only give up 2 points.
Right.
So they didn't do that, and Rutgers didn't come after the kick. And Rutgers didn't come after the kick after Raiola was sacked back to the 20-yard line with 3 minutes to play in the game. And what happens? Buschini uncorks a 69-yard punt, and Rutgers has got to start at its 11 for the final drive. So I don't know what was going on the Rutgers sideline with the game management and strategy, but it wasn't good.
Also, not to be forgotten, Rutgers tried the most obvious fake field goal I've ever seen in my life.
It was true. This is true.
This is true. It was telegraphed. The entire stadium knew it. It didn't get more obvious than that. Okay, so
I mean, the down in the distance and the wind alone there told you it was going to be a fake field goal.
So to your point, Kyle Monangai, man, he had a great start to that game. He's a very, very shifty running back and can run over you if he gets the chance as well. Rutgers ran the football 10 carries for 70 yards in the first quarter. They're off to a great start. They're playing their game. They're doing exactly what they want to do. In the next 2 quarters combined, Rutgers ran the football for 14 carries and negative 13 yards.
Yeah, that's with sacks, but still, it was ineffective for sure with the running backs.
I mean, it's that's a crazy number to think about. I think Monangai started like 8 carries for 64 yards, and then I checked. It was probably about midway through the 3rd or 4th quarter, and he was at 11 carries for 67 yards or something like that. So he just didn't have the volume that I figured he would have had. I mean, I figured he would have been loaded up 20, 25 carries. Like
on this day, yeah. It's not a good day for passing the ball, as we saw with Dylan Raiola. He had his worst day as a passer at Nebraska, under 50%, 13 to 27, 134 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Like, if Dylan's not able to cut through the wind and throw it, and he had some other issues working against him, but then, sorry, Athan Kaliak-Manis, give the ball to your all Big Ten caliber running back. Maybe somebody whispered into Greg Schiano's ear at some point once you got past the first quarter that Nebraska has outscored its opponents 65-3 in the second quarter. That's after Saturday. I think it was 7-0 on Saturday. Okay. Or the other stat that is notable here is Nebraska, after Iowa gave up a rushing touchdown against Ohio State on Saturday. Nebraska is the only team in the country not to have allowed a rushing touchdown this season. Wow. So Schiano apparently caught wind of that and said, "Well, we can't run the ball on these guys. Let's just put it in the air." They went away from what worked.
Hey, so quickly before we get out of here, thoughts on Dylan Raiola? Like you said, it wasn't his best day. Certainly, he had some stuff that was going against him. Threw a bad pick, as we've mentioned. 13 to 27, 134 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown. Threw 1 interception in the game, and was sacked 4 times as well. And so he ended up running for negative 32 yards on the day. It was uncharacteristically just skittish, shy, especially as that game went along for him. Not a concern point, I don't think, but Nebraska didn't get they didn't get top tier quarterback play on Saturday.
One time Nebraska brought Heinrich Harburg into the game, lined him up at tailback, had Dante Dowdell at fullback, handed off to Dowdell. There was a tight end who was lined up in the backfield there on that play too, and he went into motion and I thought Nebraska could have used a little bit more of that creativity just to kind of take some things away from Dylan when he was clearly struggling a little bit in the second half. I think Heinrich could have come in and run a wildcat or done something to just kind of mix it up and take the focus of the Rutgers defense away from just shutting down Raiola, because it seems if you can shut down Raiola and make Nebraska one-dimensional in the run game, then that's a key to beating Nebraska, to slowing down, silencing its offense. And Shiano's plan and Brett Bielema's plan, even Ryan Walters to a certain degree, is going to be mimicked and copied by teams that Nebraska plays in the future. That's one spot where Shiano did a nice job in scheming up things defensively that confused the Nebraska freshmen. There was all this talk before the Illinois game about how Illinois' defense would be confusing because you never knew until post-snap if it was zone or man. That wasn't necessarily the case with Rutgers. Their defense is out there for you to see, but then they start coming from different angles, and there are various things cooking on that defensive side of the ball. And I thought this was as tough as it's been for Dylan to diagnose that stuff, but it's good for him because he's going to learn from that. And like, he needs to have these moments. I wish there was more, like, I wish he had more of an ability, and I think he will at some point in his career, to go and get a couple of yards, run for the sticks on third down, like just the non-threat that he is right now, to be able to pick up a first down with his legs. And I don't think it's because he doesn't have the athleticism. He has athleticism to not to take it 60, but to get to the corner for 3 yards, even if it's second down and 3. That to me would help him a bit in the way that teams have to scheme him, and you might, it might help him evolve and get him a little more room to throw.
Really only once or twice we've seen that this year, notably in the Colorado game, when now remember, he took a hit at the end of that play. So I think that's probably part of the equation, for him as well. Okay.
He can take hits.
Yeah. He could take hits. He took one on Saturday against Rutgers where he got up and I thought he was kind of, just a little slow for a second. And I think that's kind of part of his deal sometimes, but
it's part of being a quarterback. Happens to everybody. I mean, they shouldn't baby him. Like, I mean, you want to keep him healthy, of course, but he's going to have to get out there and get dirty in these next few games.
14-7. Nebraska's 5-1 as they head into the bye. Not a bye for us, Mitch. We're gonna have a podcast still every day, 5 times a week. And then we'll very soon turn the page to a gigantic football game, Nebraska and Indiana, which will probably be big noon kickoff in a couple weeks. I mean, this is going to be awesome.
So if you're thinking about College game day for that one, 6-0 Indiana versus 5-1 Nebraska, that is the week of Texas, Georgia, correct? So, forget about game day coming into Bloomington, but big noon would be a possibility. We should get a kickoff time. We will get a kickoff time for that. I'm fairly certain on Monday morning. So in the nation top 25 week 8,
not much.
Alabama, Georgia,
Tennessee is also
Tennessee is a decent game too, but they're both coming off of losses. So big noon kickoff seems like a possibility. It's going to be. I'm excited to see what it feels like, what it looks like in Bloomington on that day. Indiana hasn't had a football season, a first half of a football season like this in a very, very long time, and so there has to be excitement for Indiana football that we're going to get a taste of, and we'll see how the Hoosiers react. They reacted to everything very well so far, but lots of time to talk about that. We'll also talk early this week about Big Ten teams. I'm intrigued by this stat. Big Ten teams are 1-7 this year when traveling 2 or 3 time zones away from home. We saw USC go down at Minnesota on Saturday night. We saw Michigan lose at Washington on Saturday also. So the only win for a Big Ten team when it has to travel more than one time zone away from home is Indiana at UCLA early in the season, coming off of a Friday game the week before with an extra day to prepare. So some big ones coming up this week as Penn State visits USC in a time zone game. We're going to call these time zone games.
Nice.
And Ohio State, fairly big game, going to Oregon this weekend in a double time zone travel game. So, all right, thanks for listening to the Locked On Nebraska podcast today, and thanks for making it your first listen. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. They've got you covered. Spencer McLaughlin does, with everything you need to get through week 6 and into week 7 of an exciting college football season. You can find the link to that podcast in the description of this podcast. All of it is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.